Food is more than just what's on our plate. It's the places where it's grown, it's the people who grow it, and so much more. Join me, Janice Person, your host, on Grounded by the Farm every other week as we talk about the foods we love. Hey everybody, this is Janice, and today I have gone somewhere, different from most of my adventures. We're in the Coachella Valley. Yeah, that like Coachella from the music. Beyonce is not around. We are talking about dates, and not the kind that go to music festivals. We're talking about dates, the fruit that grows on beautiful palms. And so today we're here with Albert Keck. He's with Hadley's, and their whole operation is so focused on dates. We have looked at so many trees today. I feel like I learned so much. You're going to see some of it in the video, but I asked Albert if we could then sit down and really talk about dates. I'm going to just start with an easy question. What's your favorite way to eat dates?
Just whole fruit form. Just
like a pitted date.
Yeah. They're off the tree. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
How does your family fix them other ways? Because I understand that maybe you do some of the stuffed and bacon wrapped.
Well, the bacon wrapped that's more of a culinary where you can find that at restaurants or make them at home. But most of the way we eat dates as a family is just as a whole piece of fruit. Love putting them in cookies or smoothies. But I think by far we just eat them as whole fruits. Yeah.
So dates are one of those things. They're not grown everywhere. They're grown just sort of in this part of the desert. Is that right?
Yes. They're just in this little corner of the country, southeastern California and very southwestern Arizona. This little corner of the country, the interior of the Southwest, is probably the hottest, driest climate in North America. And we get very little rainfall, but we do have good agricultural soils and a lot of water available to us right now. We're very concerned about the water, but it does take a lot of water to grow these crops in this climate, obviously. And it doesn't matter if it's dates or citrus or vegetables. You need
we
water.
Saw all kinds of stuff. We saw okra, we saw lemons, all driving around.
Yeah,
There's a lot
grapes,
of stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what crops you grow in this climate and on these soils. You need water to grow them. It's not in the form of rainfall. One thing that is important for fruits is that there is very little rainfall during ripening.
Right.
And California's water patterns are typically rains in the wintertime and drought in the summertime. And when we have droughts, it's usually associated with winter rainfall because we usually don't get summer rainfall.
Yeah, or snowpack somewhere.
And so the winter rainfall brings the snowpacks into the mountains, which fills the reservoirs, which we capture, and then allows us to grow these crops through irrigation during the growing season. We don't like rain when fruit is ripening. And so that's dates. They need that dry, hot desert climate. But
and you guys are really specific on where you put water on a lot of things, right? Like at the precise times you need it, or the ways you need to put it on. There are different ways you need to put water on.
Yeah. On the farm, it's everything is very coordinated. And so, as you saw earlier, dates require a lot of labor and tillage and whatnot, and all those things need to be scheduled around irrigation. Some of our orchards we use flood. We have basins that are dead level, and then we also have drip on most of our orchards. So we have to water. You can't grow a crop without water. A lot of times you have to schedule the application of that water so you could do the other jobs.
It's not like given to me juicy like a lemon, right? So if I'm eating table grapes, I feel the water in the grapes. Dates, do they naturally dry or?
So dates are technically they're not considered a dried fruit in the sense they were a fresh grape that then got dried down to a raisin.
Okay.
Dates actually ripen in the form that we know them as.
Okay.
And so they're not laden with active water. Like a lemon would be, or a tangerine or something, or a mandarin. The form that we know them in the way we eat them, that's how they ripen.
Okay. It's a little more dried down than a lot of fruits.
Yeah, it's low moisture.
Yeah. What all kind of nutritionally, what does a date offer somebody like me? Fiber, Vitamins.
Fiber, and they're probably one of the highest sources of potassium of the fruits.
Forget those bananas that everybody's eating for their leg cramps.
Yeah, they're higher in potassium than bananas. And so those are the fiber and potassium are probably the two most beneficial aspects of date nutrition. But, they've got natural sugars and, a lot of other minor elements. They have iron and, a little bit of protein, but they're no salt, no no cholesterol. So they're considered a very healthy, heart healthy food.
Yeah.
And that's good for us. I think people are interested in eating healthier.
Yeah.
And that's helping us.
And I think dates are one of those things that you can find a lot of places to put dates in recipes and stuff. If you like to cook or bake or something, there's date breads or cookies or something. And if you put them in with some chocolate chips, your kids may not even notice.
So one of my favorite homemade recipes that we use, I guess, date pieces in is it's an oatmeal pecan cookie.
Ooh.
And it's just so good. It's just, and so a friend of mine shared that with she actually shared some batches with our family and said, I got to learn how to make these. They're so good. But yes, dates are very versatile.
Yeah.
And like I said, in our family, we mostly eat them as whole fruits, but from a culinary perspective, they're extremely versatile. They maintain their form through cooked dishes. You could put them in rice dishes and whatnot. They're popular in salads. Obviously baking.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very versatile in that regard.
So there are several different varieties, and you showed me them as we went through. How would you describe the differences to somebody who's not sure they've maybe haven't bought a lot of dates themselves?
Yeah, the date palms, it's interesting. The different varieties that we grow, the palms actually look different to me, but to most people, they would probably all look the same.
They all look like palm trees that are at the beach to me, except they've got fruit hanging off of them.
Yeah, so they have these just, I guess unique details that I notice, but I think most people passing by would never notice.
It's like parents with identical twins usually find something that makes a difference in the
because they're very
identical
similar.
twins.
They look very similar, so but once that's a great analogy. So the main varieties we grow are Deglet, Nor, and Medjool, but we also have a few Halawi and Zahidi varieties. Most of our main varieties, Deglet, Nor, and Medjool, they originated from North Africa. The other varieties, I believe, are from Iraq.
Okay.
And there's also a Barhi variety, which is a very unique date, and that's grown. That's actually harvested in the unripe condition. It's actually
really?
It's actually yellow, like a yellow apple, and it's crunchy. You actually eat it like an apple.
Huh.
It's like, I don't know. It's very sweet, and but it's crunchy. It's not soft and chewy like a ripe date. Typically, they do ripen in that form, but they're edible in a non-ripened form, which is very unique. So that's also an Iraqi date variety. So Iraq and then North Africa, Tunisia, and Morocco,
and they date back we're saying Iraq, but they date back to like Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
I mean, like dates are like one of the oldest foods in the world, probably.
I think it's one of the oldest cultivated fruit crops in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the references in the Bible, I think when they talk about certain trees, they're referencing date palms, but they might not say date palms.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's obviously very central to Middle Eastern culture.
Yeah. So do the dates appear different? So the Medjool and the Deglet Noir are the biggest ones in terms of percentages for you.
In the U.S. market,
but even I noticed some of the ones look so much bigger on the tree.
The Medjools are noted for their size, but that's also a result of hand thinning.
Okay.
And so if you can imagine the flowers of dates, the female flower on a date palm, it basically is a bunch with several strands on it, and with a lot of berries that, when they're pollinated, they grow into dates. Well, those Medjools, we go up with the workers and hand thin each strand.
Okay.
Which means twisting off the berries and keeping about an inch of space between the berries on the strand. So it's extremely labor intensive. And that results obviously in a much larger piece of fruit.
Yeah.
But a very expensive piece of fruit. So it's laborious, it's time consuming, it's expensive.
Are those more used in restaurants and culinary then?
I'm not sure. I think in the U.S. date market, I would say both the medjool and deglets are about evenly split. And I've seen their application in both culinary and whole fruit form and whatnot. So,
yeah. Neat. I do like the idea that there are these magic golden ones out there that I might be able to find someday, but I didn't see them today on your farm.
The elusive barhi. They're probably very seasonal. They don't look for them in late August. You might find something in a very specialty, produce market or something.
Yeah. I would say, having lived in various parts of the country, dates weren't something I always saw in the typical grocery store in my neighborhood. I might see them more in the Mediterranean markets or some of those kind of things that would at least be more plentiful. Like you would have a larger package or something of them, whereas in some of the smaller grocery stores, dates only came out sort of around the holidays with date nut breads and some of those kind of things. But it seems like they've gotten a little bit larger market share and a little more attention, probably because of the health properties. Yeah. And
I think in general, produce in America has it's become a year-round thing, for all of us. We go to our supermarkets and the variety and quantity that's available to us all year long.
It's amazing.
Is incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we've become accustomed to that. I think in the old days, these fruits would come into season and we would expect them, like you just mentioned, in our mind culturally, it's like, oh, this is date season or this is grape season or watermelon season. Well, now we don't have that anymore in our own personal lives or cultures. But the other thing that and so there's more competition year round for that produce space in the supermarkets. And so there's just it's almost like too much choice almost. It's like if I go somewhere and there's too much choice, I shut down. But the one thing we are enjoying in produce and dates especially fit into this is I think the American diet is more health conscious than it used to be.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, it was like Cheetos and Doritos and get out of my way. And I notice now in the younger generations, the young adults and even the teens, that they're aware of what they eat from a nutritional or dietetic perspective. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's established itself in our culture in the younger generations, that they're aware of those issues. And when I was young, just starting, back from college, and we were struggling in the market with the date industry, and a lot of the people here were lamenting that it's just old people that are eating dates, and they're all dying, and we have no future. And I
thought that was prunes.
Yeah,
that's totally different.
Well, prunes are very different than dates, and dates don't have that I guess the laxative effect that prunes have, but they're high in fiber. But anyway, and so I remember that there was this
concern over the future.
Yeah, it was a pessimism that was over the trade in that regard. And then I started thinking, well, old people are living longer too than they used to, right? So that could be an expansion of our market. But I didn't expect the younger generations to latch on.
Yeah.
And that in the past 10 or 15 years, the per capita consumption of dates in the United States has gone from about a quarter a pound per person to about a half pound per person.
Wow.
That doesn't seem like a lot.
No, that's a lot.
I mean, but a lot of your listeners might not think that's a lot.
That's like doubling.
But that's doubling the per capita consumption. And, and to an industry like ours, when you go from 1/4 pound to a half pound, that's tens of millions of pounds. And then you really need to plant more dates. In the United States, a lot of that has resulted in a lot of imported dates. Mm-hmm. Which is a concern for me as a farmer. But I am happy that people are eating dates, whether they're grown here or imported. I'm happy that they're eating more dates, and I want them to eat more yet. But it's good, nutritious food, all natural, and so we want to keep increasing that per capita consumption. We need to, and so I'm optimistic, even though we're facing some tough times right now. I'm optimistic.
Well, how did you become a date farmer? Like, what is your background path to get here?
My grandparents, they actually moved out from Los Angeles right before World War II. Mm-hmm. my parents followed, and then me and my sister and brother-in-law succeeded them. When I was in college, I realized I did not want to live on the coast in an urban area. Growing up here in Indio, this was one of those interior agricultural valleys that a lot of kids grow up in, that their first thought is leaving and not coming back. And that was my plan. I was like, okay, I went to school here and, going off to college, and thank you, Mom and Dad. And now I'm out of here. And I never thought I'd come back. Well, when I was in college, our nation went into recession. Jobs weren't plentiful. The date industry was in a tough spot as well. Like I said, grew up in this business. Parents worked hard. I saw that. I had that instilled in me growing up. But what I didn't realize is that I also loved it. And it took me going to college to realize that I don't want to work in an urban, coastal, information age, tech age environment. I'm getting out of here. I don't know where I'm going. It's going to be in agriculture. And I thought I might be in Missouri even. I said, I don't know where it's going to be. Kansas, Missouri, I don't know. Ohio, I don't know where it's going to take me. It's like, but I know I'm not going to be in coastal California. And then the date industry was in trouble. My dad was growing dates for what became Dole Food Company, and they were getting out of the business. They were canceling his long-term contract. That's when Hadley Date Gardens was offered to him for sale. And my dad's also a cattle rancher in New Mexico. And he was, I think, looking forward to finally retiring from the date business when this opportunity came up. And he talked to me about it. He said, Albert, these guys are in trouble. It's not a good time in our industry. I thought I was done, but they really want to get out of it. And if we want to accept their offer of this business,
we can make that happen.
We can make it work.
Yeah.
But you have to want to come back and do this. If you don't, that's cool. He wasn't pressuring me. He was happy.
It's an option.
He was happy with his plan of not coming back or not continuing in the industry. And it was tough times, and I don't blame him for that. And again, farming's got that legacy aspect to it. Loved farming. Mm-hmm. It's in my blood. Yeah. But it's also a business.
Yeah.
It makes no sense in doing it if you're going to go broke and lose what you have. And those were the 80s. And I think most people today don't realize how much of a crisis farmers were in the 1980s in this country.
Yeah.
And I grew up in that. I saw my parents struggling, and interest rates were pushing 20%. A recession helped me make a decision. And I said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. And came back, and my sister and brother-in-law followed me shortly thereafter. And I forgot to get the approval of my fiance.
When you agreed to come back?
Yes. And she grew up in New York City, in Manhattan. And I was really worried that she would not agree to live in Indio. And I said, uh-oh, I don't know if I did this. I did not do it right. I know that much. But she was getting her teaching credential in LA, and thank goodness she
was
loved being here. Yeah, she loved being here. So we made a go of it. We started having kids, raised a family, and it turned out to be a wonderful life decision. And yeah, I love farming. I mean, it's what I do. It's natural to me. It's in my blood. We got in. It was a tough row, very long time. Of just the industry was just in a bad spot.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, a lot of my colleagues in the industry were lamenting being in this industry and saying, our consumers are dying. There's no future, nothing else. And now the industry's twice as big as it was back then. So,
yeah, it's amazing. And I'm sure this area has changed like immensely, right? So I grew up in Memphis. Mm-hmm. Memphis hasn't changed that much, I would say. Mm-hmm. Indio, the Coachella Valley, has probably changed, like, at least culturally. Like, people know this area just because of music festivals and Palm Springs. Yeah. And
well, one thing we enjoy is that this is a resort valley. Mm-hmm. And, not many farmers get to farm in a resort community. there's that dichotomy to our community. It's nothing new. The Coachella Valley was always an escape for LA. And we talked about Memphis with Elvis. Elvis honeymooned here in Palm Springs. Sinatra and Dean Martin, they all hung out here.
Yeah.
It was their little
the
Shangri-La, just like, let's go.
Bob Hope has his own street.
Yeah. And so all those Hollywood celebrities back in the day, Palm Springs was their playground, and it became a resort, obviously, as a result of all that. And our beautiful climate, half the year.
I'm in here in the worst time of year because it's like so freaking hot.
Yeah, you're dedicated. That let all your listeners know just how committed you are to just getting them that information. But it's also been agricultural. Yeah. Because of its climate and its in the water and its soils and whatnot. The valley kind of developed along both those two lines, hospitality resorts and agriculture. Many people in this valley don't realize how agricultural this valley is. Yeah. They just think of it for Coachella and Palm Springs. But the main connector in the valley is called Highway 111. And when I was a child, I remember that Highway 111 was lined by date orchards. They're just remnants of those date palms now. And date palms are also used as a landscape specimen. So a lot of those developments have date palms from the old date orchards. Mm-hmm. And most people don't realize that those Highway 111 was lined by date orchards. And we also call them date gardens. And I remember that. People are, a lot of times they're very concerned because they see farmland being taken over by urban development. Mm-hmm. But most of coastal California was farmland. Orange County was named Orange County because of oranges. Yeah. I think
we talked to an avocado farmer who had moved further and further out. They used to grow other things. They were in Orange County, and then they moved.
So human civilization has, obviously.
It happened in New York at LaGuardia. I had friends that used to farm in that area. Their family did.
So civilization has always revolved around agriculture, and then cities have grown where the farms were, and then the farms get pushed further out. We probably go to lower quality soils and whatnot. But anyway, we always adapt. Yeah. And so this valley is no different. The farms were along 111, and urban development pushed those farms further southeast in our valley. Mm-hmm. Today, there might be more land and agriculture in our valley than there was 50 years ago.
Let's walk through. You gave me a really good explanation while we were driving around of the 2 months, like 6 different seasons that you have on a date farm. Because of that, your farm is a little different than some. Like some farms really need seasonal labor, but yours has so much work being done throughout the year. So would you mind going through that?
It's a year-round endeavor. Yep. We have a year-round climate here. The growing of the actual fruit is about a 6 to 7 month process. Okay. But the work in the orchard is all year. It flows along a calendar year very, very conveniently. In January and February, we have to go up the tree. Harvest is in the fall. So by the end of the year, we're done harvesting. And then as we round out the new year, we start the work all over again. And that requires a cleanup of the trees. And so keep in mind, every single tree has to be worked by hand. And so the palm tree workers, we call them palmeros. And that's Spanish for a man who goes in a palm tree or something. So the palmero will go up the tree in January and February, each and every tree, clean off the thorns that come with the new flush of fronds, and cut off the old bunch stalks from the previous crop. So we're cleaning up the tree. It takes about 2 months.
So now, if you don't mind me stepping back, so people have seen palm trees, almost all of us have seen palm trees, but may not have seen how they get trimmed out. And that's what you're talking about is... So the stalk that had the dates on it the year before.
We have to cut that off.
And then the new ones that have come out from the center have thorns on it. You're going to get
new fronds. The new fronds. So the palm tree is, most people know palm tree. It's a long, skinny trunk with a fluffy head.
And you have all sizes, heights, because some are younger trees.
The height of a palm tree is typically related to its age. Mm-hmm. So the older it is, the taller it gets. So a palm is basically a plant with a long, skinny trunk and a fluffy head. That fluffy head are the palm fronds, the leaves. Date palm leaves have very severe thorns on them. They're about 4 to 6 inches long and very, very.
They look like they'd
rigid.
Rip through flesh.
Very
fast.
Rigid. Yeah, they'll go through boots and tires and everything else. And so workers have to go into the crown of those date palms to work the crop, but they have to shave the thorns off of them before they can do that. So the new flush of fronds, the leaves, will come out with those mean thorns. So the first job in January, February is dethorning, taking off those thorns and then cutting off the old bunch stalks and basically cleaning up the tree. And then that's followed by pollination. So date palms are fruit-producing trees, which means their flowers will develop into fruit. The varieties that we grow here, they typically bloom in March and April. Date palms are not insect pollinated; they're wind pollinated. Yeah, which means in a natural oasis setting where they originate from, they also come in male and female. Half the trees would be male, half of them would be female. The male trees grow flowers just like the female trees. The male flowers are, instead of tight, compact berries on the stem, they'll have pods along their stem that are hollow and full of pollen. Okay. And as those flowers grow and then open and bloom, as the pods dry, that pollen is then released into the air. And so in a natural setting, the wind would just dust that pollen all throughout the air. And the female flowers, they bloom and open, and those female flowers have pollen land on them, and then that creates pollination, which creates fruit. And the date industry...
That leaves some things open to happenstance.
Yes, exactly.
If the wind goes the right way.
Right. You can
at the right time.
You can have one strong windstorm take away all the male pollen for the rest of the season, that kind of thing. And so we actually intentionally cultivate and harvest the male flowers, bring them in, we dry them, we dust the pollen out of the pods, collect it, filter them, and then we allocate the pollen to the workers, very measured basis because it's very expensive, and we know how much we need for each acre of female palms. And then the workers will then go and work the female palm they'll climb up the tree, get into the crown, open the flower, and thin the flower by hand. And then we typically put a paper bag over the flower, over the female flower. So we tie the female flower back up after we open and thin it, then put a bag over it, and then poke a hole through the bag with the hand duster, and then puff a couple puffs of pollen into that female flower. And the bag serves a purpose. It contains the pollen, but it also improves the local climate of that flower, raises it probably a couple degrees, which if we're above 65 degrees for 4 hours, we'll get a successful pollination. Okay. And so that time of year, March and April, it could be cooler than that. So just every little degree helps. And so that takes 2 trips up the tree because the female flowers don't bloom all at once, and we have to go back up and capture the second flush. And so by the end of April, the workers have been up the tree 3 times. Those flowers that are now pollinated will grow into bunches of fruit. And now keep in mind that they're artificially pollinated, so it's a heavier crop set than you would have just wind pollination. Well, those bunches could grow upwards of 100 pounds and break off the tree. Yeah. When they're green and wet. And so in order to support the developing, ripening bunch, we have to go allocate the bunches around the tree to balance the crop load, and also support the bunch by tying each bunch to a frond so as to support the weight of that bunch. And then at that point, that would be the 4th trip up the tree, and we're usually done that's May and June. Yeah. So 2-month cycles for each of these. And then in July and August, we go, and now the crop is now pollinated and set, and then balanced around the tree. And now the fruit is growing. And you saw the bunches, and they're green at this point of the year. And in July and August, those workers will then go back up each tree again. They'll do a second pruning, because palm fronds, on all palm trees, they senesce from the bottom of the crown. So the oldest fronds would be on the bottom of the head of the crown. They will start to dry out later in the summer. So we prune those off the tree to keep the tree clean. And then we put the bags over the bunches that are now set and basically ripening through the course of the summer to protect them from birds and insects, and also from rainfall.
And we got some video of Rodolfo doing something.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it'll protect them from, so it protects the ripening fruit. And then in September, we start harvesting the early varieties. And then, usually by Christmas, we're done with the later varieties. The other thing that helps us, because it's a very skilled labor force, as you saw, it allows us to employ a permanent labor force year-round that's highly skilled, that takes years to develop these abilities. Within the valley, this small little tiny valley, the Coachella Valley, we have microclimates, which also regulate the flush of the flowers and the ripening of the crop at different times throughout that season. And so they all don't.
Farm is spaced out a little bit.
Yes, and so geographically, our farms are spaced out across the valley. And so the other thing that helps regulate that pace of production is the age of the date orchard and the variety of the date palms. So different varieties flush out earlier and ripen earlier than others. Different age palms do the same thing. Different locations in the valley. All those things.
Still a lot of details to keep track of.
all those things combine to help us regulate the labor force required to keep up with the crop.
Yeah.
And so it all works very nicely in the sense that it allows the workers more time to reach all those trees before, let's say, the flower is no longer receptive to pollen, or before the crop is damaged by not being harvested. I think that works nicely for both the farmer and the worker, in the sense that we're able to manage these very highly skilled workers, and they're able to make a lot of money and work year round. And as far as the global economy, we're fighting for consumer dollars, for value. Consumers are demanding; they want quality. We have to meet that market. The cost per unit is very important. So how do you operate in a very high cost environment like California, the United States in general? And you have to be productive. You have to mind your cost. Especially in this environment nowadays with fertilizer being crazy, you do trim corners. You just, sometimes it's just not worth it to put that extra pound of nitrogen on with the cost of nitrogen. We're always striving to keep costs contained, but before we get so caught up on cost, we do have to have good production. We need yield and quality as well. And so it's that yield and quality that does pay for this, high skilled labor, and does pay for these inputs and, the water and the tillage and everything else. But again, we're in a global environment with the economy, and it's tough because we're a very expensive area to farm in, especially for these produce crops. Yeah.
Life isn't always easy in Coachella.
No. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure the people that put on the concert,
wherever you are, right?
Yeah, the people that put on the concerts work hard, and they have to keep their costs under control too, and put on a good show. And, but yeah, like you say, we don't see other people's the details of their trades.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is how I actually think, despite the specialization of our date crop, being in this industry. Yeah. Throughout agriculture and produce especially, there's so many things that are similar.
It's wild. Yeah. And I think people get to know, once you're in farming, you get to know other farmers, so you get to have a line of sight on other things.
Yeah, we identify so closely.
You understand so much that relates over.
We saw a new orchard that's not quite yet in production.
Right.
It takes us about 5 years before we start getting crops off of these orchards.
I even asked you that question while we were riding around, but I didn't ask it now.
But date palms don't come into full bearing until about 10 to 12 years.
Yeah, and you said the trees can last...
Yeah, they can last 70 or 80 years. And then they start to fall over and the orchards thin out, and then we finally bite the bullet and spend money to get rid of the orchard and replant it. But yeah, it's
a really long-term commitment.
Long-term endeavor, yeah. And so
the oldest trees, maybe your dad or granddad,
those are going out now. Yeah. And the trees that I'm planting today, I won't see the end of. Yeah. It's kind of strange to think of it like that, but it's a long...
You'll see them productive, but you won't see them...
I won't see them, and I won't even see them leave the prime of their production, which is probably... they're typically prime producers through their 50s. It's almost like a human life cycle. There's a lot of jokes you can make. You wanted to talk about dates.
I had all the puns lined up. I mean, all the puns.
Well, we talk about, the male palms and the female palms. So the male palms are short, fat, and lazy. and once they do their job, which is one time per year, the female palms bear the load and work the rest of the year. And it's one male for 50 females. So there's a lot of fun things about dates. And now, as far as the word date goes, date, I think in the English language, I think its origin is related to maybe in Latin with digit. So in Spanish they call them dati, and I think that's related to like a finger, like a digit, because they're kind of like a digit, like in the bunches. Yeah, and so I guess that became date in the English language. And one of the things we do have the California Date Commission, which is our industry association to try to promote dates and research and all that. And one thing that we struggle with is how do you do a search for dates on our industry? Because you arrive at all the wrong ones, right? And you even have the calendar date. That's another difficulty. And so the thought crossed my mind: is there something else we can call these things? Because you can't do internet searches on them. But anyway, it is what it is. We are California Dates, and that's what we tout. But no, I love them. I enjoy this industry, and I enjoy that a lot of people or more and more people are enjoying them. It's nice.
Well, I'll make sure we give people your website.
We don't sell to the retail trade. Now, we're just the farmer now, but Hadley Fruit Orchards, our cousins down the road, they are a retail outlet. And there are other retail outlets here in the valley. Yeah. There's a couple more large, farm stands that sell dates in particular. And
I saw your dates were being loaded up, and it looked like I could find them in my local Costco.
Yeah,
or something.
they're available on the trade, and we ship to retailers, and we also on our byproduct grades those go into energy bars. They're very popular for that ingredient use. A lot of the large energy bar companies use dates as one of their base ingredients, and of course dates have sugar and they have fiber and potassium. And they're just loaded with things that profile nicely to the energy bar segment. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure they see your logo and stuff when we came through, because it's always fun to me to find somebody that, I have a friend that grows for Andy Boy lettuce. And then when I see that lettuce in the store, I know it's from a farmer like John.
Yeah. These are real companies and real families.
We need people who can grow it so that people like me can continue to do the things that we enjoy.
We all go to the produce aisle. Even the farmers do. And it's just a nation of 350 million people and even more in the world will not get fed without commercial farming. And that's, but I think those family farming operations, which by and large are commercial operations, we hold those values that I think people admire. Yeah. That's hard work, care for the land, care for the workers, care for the consumers. My suppliers and my customers are also part of what I feel responsible for. Right. And I don't think I'm unique in farming. I think
you're pretty standard.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Thanks so much for coming. We will have this video up on Grounded by the Farm. You guys are going to really enjoy it. So many odd things I've never even seen. So I really appreciate Albert. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Janice, thanks for the time you took and all the preparation that went into this as well. I really admire that.
I had a great time.
It was enjoyable for me too. Thank you.
I'm not sure why, but I had never given much thought to dates. And wow, did I learn a lot, especially getting out and seeing it. So I tried to capture a lot of that in the video. And I think you ought to find it interesting. It's on groundedbythefarm.com or the Grounded by the Farm YouTube channel. Go ahead and take a look at that. We'll share it on our Facebook page too. But I really am blown away and got myself some dates through Amazon. So Hadley's also has retail partners, one of whom actually offers their dates on Amazon. So I'll leave a link for that here too. And we'll talk to you guys again in 2 weeks. Thanks so much.